So we've got to play a consistent 4 quarters against this team. This is a very good team. And again, this is the National Football League, so you better get ready to play your best each and every week.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Weird day of sports today. The NBA is back, and there's a lot of NBA talking points being shared on TV and on the radio in the sports world today. Mostly none of them have to do with the games that are being played. It was cool to see the Clippers' new building last night. I actually watched a little bit of the game, a very small amount of the game on ESPN after the Bucks and the Sixers. Steve Ballmer built a cool building. That wall's cool. It's fun. It was something cool. And the end of the game was fun, too. I'd be lying if I stayed awake for it. But went to overtime. It was a fun game. We have a story today about Kawhi Leonard's trainer getting fired by the Clippers, and now he's claiming that they have forced Kawhi to put his body and his health on the line for the sake of the team. It's like, oh, so this is San Antonio all over again. So right now, as of this afternoon, kind of feels like a coin flip as to whether or not Kawhi Leonard plays for the Clippers ever again, which is interesting. I guess it's not the most shocking headline in the world, but not really one that was top of mind when I woke up this morning. This Penn State story, I know the Badgers played Penn State on Saturday, and we covered the Wisconsin side of this matchup with Jesse Temple last night. I don't really care to get into it. I don't really care to get in detail about it. But 2 former players in the Penn State program were arraigned yesterday on counts of rape and, other counts, felony counts. And I don't know if you saw the clip of James Franklin's press conference today. It's just bizarre. And it's a tough situation. Like, James Franklin cannot stand there and give detailed answers about the situation. I understand that. But when a reporter asks James Franklin, as reporters kind of have to do, he just walks up, he just storms off, and he gestures to the SID. You get up there, tell him. And then he gets back up there. All right, what's up, guys? As if it's not, it's just bizarre. It's a bizarre video, and it's been all over Twitter today. I am someone who believes that if a head football coach is going to make $7.5–8 million a year, as James Franklin does, like, I understand he can't give intimate details about the situation, but he should be able to engage with the press on some level. Like, hey, buddy, the $8 million you're getting paid a year, some of that has to be related to media management and crisis management. Just weird. So that became a story today. Wisconsin and Penn State on Saturday night. We'll continue to get ready for that game, but I want to focus mostly tonight on the Packers, a little bit on the Bucks to start because their opener, I should say, was last night. Mike Clemens going to join us at 5:30. Should be a really good Wisco Sports show tonight. Really, really, really looking forward to having Mike on at 5:30 to talk about some of the things going down in Green Bay today. I saw Rich Bisaccia was speaking. I assumed Jeff Hafley was going to speak next. I really would have liked to hear what Jeff Hafley had to say before the show started today, and I would have liked to bring you some of that audio, but that's why we have Mike, and he'll be here in about an hour and a half. 608-321-1670. You want to call or text the show? Genuinely would love to have you. You know I love taking calls. The show live stream as well on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Wisco Grant. Shout out to the Bucks. I spent a good 10 minutes on the show last night bemoaning the state of the league, the NBA. And I thought I was whining a little bit. I'm like, man, I don't want to be the guy that just hates on everything, because I think sometimes in sports talk, if people don't have anything specific to say, you just hate on it. Like the wall in the Clippers game last night. I was listening to some Wisconsin sports radio earlier this morning, and everyone's dumping on, oh, it's dumb. Let's see how fired up it is in January. Okay, well, so we're just going to hate on everything? Is that what sports talk is now? Like, we're just going to take a dump on everything? Like, I don't want to be the guy that just rips the NBA or rips this or rips that. But as I consume sports content today, I was far from the only one being critical about how the NBA season has started. So that feels nice, because I don't like to be the whiner unless whining is necessary. Sometimes whining is necessary. But I had fun watching the Bucks game last night. First half was a bit sloppy because no one could hit shots, but then in the third and the fourth quarter, Bucks pulled away. And it was a fun game to watch. It felt a little cheap knowing that Joel Embiid and Paul George weren't playing, but I give the Bucks credit. Not just for winning the game, but it was really fun to watch Dame. He heated up in the second half. And here's what's funny about Damian Lillard. And shout out to Frank Madden, who pointed this out on Twitter earlier today. Brew Hoop. Frank Madden. Dame, by the way, scoring last night. What did he end up with? 30? Here's the funny thing about Dame. A bad Damian Lillard night and a good Damian Lillard night look almost identical. They're the same. They're the same game. The only difference is on a good Dame night, the shots go through the hoop. That's the difference. This is the only difference. If you watch him away from the ball, if you watch him before the shot, a great Damian Lillard night and a really bad Damian Lillard night, they look the same. It's the same approach. He takes the same shots. He runs the same type of sets. He's the same player. The only difference between a great Damian Lillard night and a bad Damian Lillard night is the shots go through the hoop. This is the only difference. It's the only difference. And that's not, by the way, the case with all athletes in all sports. You might be saying, well, duh, Grant, of course, the shots seem to go in there. No, but what I'm saying is with a quarterback, for example, and I know we're crossing sports, but bear with me. We would talk about a quarterback like, man, when he's playing good football, the ball's coming out on time. He's hitting receivers in stride. The footwork is clean. He's running the offense, right? We've had those conversations about Aaron Rodgers before. Oh, and then when he's off, he's holding onto the ball too long. He's playing hero ball, maybe throwing off the back foot. The mechanics start to slip a little bit, right? We talk about athletes. Baseball is the same way. Maybe baseball, this Brewers team in a big picture, right? When they're playing good, they're seeing a lot of pitches. They're extending at bats. They're getting on base. They're taking walks. They're moving runners over. They're doing all these things. And when the Brewers weren't hitting so well this summer, they were popping a lot of balls up. Short at bats, not making the pitcher work very hard. Had lots of conversations about this, right? So when the Brewers offense is playing well versus playing poorly, it's not just about the ball falling into place for hits. The mechanics of the offense look different when the offense is humming versus when the offense is kind of stalled out. Same with quarterback play. With Damian Lillard, that's not the case. Like, it's the same game. A bad Dame game and a good Dame game. It's the same game. The only difference is the ball's going through the hoop. Like last night, he wasn't taking a lot of good shots. There were a lot of shots that were off balance, that were really deep, that were coming off a pick, off the dribble, not shots that you would say, oh, Damian Lillard did a really good job getting to his spots tonight. No, he just made his shots. That's kind of how Damian Lillard works. And maybe for the Bucks to improve and maybe for the Bucks to be the best versions of themselves, that has to change a little bit. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more intention when it's clear that Damian Lillard's shots aren't going in. Okay, well, we're going to this little change of pace. We're going to run some sets to get him moving towards the rim. And, we're going to bring him some picks and use some actions to get him going downhill towards the basket. Maybe it can't be as simple for Damian Lillard as, well, it's a good night or a bad night, make or miss league. I don't like reducing basketball to simply, well, that team made their shots, the other team didn't. I think there's more to it. But with Damian Lillard, a lot of times there's not more to it. It's just the ball goes through the hoop or it doesn't. And the machinations behind that, everything leading up until that moment, it kind of looks the same. Good night and bad night. Also, Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, and DeLon Wright feel so much better than Crowder and Pat Beverly. It's just those guys. I'm like, okay, we got some adults out there. We got some freaking adults. And no offense to Malik Beasley, no offense to Jay Crowder, although maybe a little offense. The correct amount of offense to Pat Beverly, like Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, DeLon Wright. They're more spry, they're more skilled, they're more everything. Those players feel like such upgrades, and thank God, because there were a couple players in the Bucks last year. I'm like, this is what we got to roll with. Like, these are the guys we got to rely on. So it was fun to watch Damian Lillard knock a bunch of shots down. Brook Lopez, at least defensively, looks like Brook Lopez. I know he took a bunch of threes, and not a lot of them went in, but to watch Giannis and Dame and Brook, I think, operate in the pick and roll and with dribble handoffs, there were a couple really good sets, and I think the season's off to a great start. Probably doesn't need any more analysis than that. It was fun to watch the Bucks last night, even though I think the state of the NBA right now is in a bit of a tough place. Let's move on to the Packers. That's all I really have to say about the Bucks. If you have something to add, I'll take your calls, but I don't have much more to say. I am anti-trap game. I would like to come out as a sports talk host and make it very clear that as a sports talk voice and as a show, this is an anti-trap game show. I don't believe in trap games. I don't believe in trap games in the NFL. What happened to any given Sunday? Right? What happened to it's hard to win in this league? I've been talking with a couple buddies this week, a group chat, me and my two best college buddies. We were talking a little bit this morning. One's a Bears fan, another one's a Packers fan. It's just the three of us. And my buddy who's a Bears fan asked, hey, is this a trap game for the Packers? I'm like, no. They could just lose. Like Trevor Lawrence could get hot and Doug Peterson could get hot and the Packers could come out sluggish. Wouldn't be because it's a trap game. Wouldn't be because they're looking forward to Detroit. it would just be because they didn't come ready to play, or they're sluggish, or the travel got to them, or they were feeling themselves a little bit after beating CJ Stroud and the Texans, right? Trap games in the NFL do not exist. Anybody can beat anybody at any given time. The phrase is any given Sunday. It's not because it's a trap game. It's because the Jags could easily beat the Packers. The Jags could beat anybody. The Chiefs could lose to anybody. The Packers could lose to anybody. I am anti-trap game. The only football teams in America that have grounds for a trap game are Oregon, Georgia, maybe Ohio State, depending on who they lose to. That's really it. And the only reason I don't include Penn State, I just gave you the first, the second, and the fourth ranked teams in the AP Top 25. Penn State, to me, is not on the level of those other teams. And James Franklin has not proven to be on the level where he can make it through an elite season with an elite roster without stepping on his wang. Now, with the media stepping on his wang, that's a different thing. I think he did that yesterday or today, whenever that presser was. It really started making headlines today. It could have been yesterday. Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State. Those teams are all good enough and talented enough and experienced enough. They could be caught in a trap game. But like Badger fans, respectively, or respectfully, I guess both, like Northwestern's not a trap game. Well, you could be looking ahead. You could be looking forward to Penn State. No. You could just lose. Like the Badgers could just lose to Northwestern. They could just go down to Evanston and get their what's pushed around, because we've seen that before. I hear the phrase trap game thrown around a lot, and trap game, the phrase trap game, the idea of a trap game would indicate that the team being trapped is so good and so much better and so above their competition that they can look ahead to another opponent and they can lose focus, and then that can cost them the game. The Badgers aren't good enough to have a trap game. Although I think they've really done some good things the last couple weeks. But like Northwestern, that's not a potential trap game. Northwestern could just beat them. It happened last year. It seemed inconceivable last year that Northwestern could have came into Camp Randall and went up 21-0 or whatever it was. Physically dominated the Badgers, pushed them around, embarrassed them. In the words of Luke Fickell, dominated them. The Badgers aren't good enough. 99% of football teams in college football aren't good enough to have a trap game. Like, Miami, they're 7-0. Yeah, but if they get upset, not going to be shocked. Tennessee's 6-1. If they get upset, not going to be shocked. Same with Clemson. Same with LSU. Same with Indiana. Although Indiana, good for the Big Ten, right? Like, there are 3 or 4 teams in college football that are truly elite enough to be in a position to be trapped. I don't think there's any team in the NFL the NFL is just so compressed. Anybody can beat anybody in the NFL. That's why betting against the spread is so hard. Right? That's why all these games are so close. No team in the NFL is so much better than another team where they're above a reasonable situation in which they could lose. The Packers could just be sluggish, traveling down to Florida. Maybe they're not hydrated. Maybe they don't deal with the heat. Maybe they're feeling themselves a little bit coming off of Houston. All those things could happen. Maybe Matt LaFleur pushes a couple buttons offensively that don't turn out to be the right ones. The Jags guess a couple times defensively. They get a couple takeaways, and all of a sudden the Packers lose. Then the Packers lose. But it's not because they were looking past Jacksonville towards Detroit. It'll just be because they lose. Because I don't think trap games exist in the NFL, and I don't think trap games exist in college football, save for the 3 or 4 most elite talented programs in the country. And Wisconsin is not one. Like Northwestern was not a trap game possibility. They could have just lost to Northwestern, and I don't think anyone would have been shocked. Disappointed? Let down? Yeah. Shocked? Absolutely not. This is not Bama and Vanderbilt level competition. There's not that much of a disparity, although we've seen even Alabama can fall to Vanderbilt, which is why I didn't include Alabama in my list of Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State. To me, those are like the 3 teams that are good enough and talented enough and experienced enough to be trapped. I don't think trap games exist in the NFL. Anybody can just beat anybody. So the idea that the Packers could go down to Jacksonville and lose, 100%, I buy that idea. It could totally happen. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't go so far as to say I expect it. But all of these things that Matt LaFleur said yesterday about the Jags, and I played this cut yesterday, I'll play it one more time. All of this is true. And maybe Matt LaFleur is making a coaching decision to really hammer it home and to remind his guys, but he's not lying here.
Well, I think when you look at this team, they have lost a game by 3 points, by 4 points, and by 5 points. And they were in command versus Houston and versus Miami, and they easily should have won. They could be 5-2, sitting the same as us right now. So I think that speaks to who this football team is. They've got weapons in every phase of the game. They've got receivers that are explosive. The tight end's explosive. They got 2 runners. They got a franchise quarterback. And then I think you look at the defensive side of the ball and just their ability to get after the quarterback is it's real. They got 2 edge rushers that are 2 of the best in the game. So shoot, on teams are making plays. They had a 96-yard punt return for a touchdown last week. And so we've got to play a consistent 4 quarters against this team. This is a very good team. And again, this is the National Football League, so you better get ready to play your best each and every week.
I would say they're a great team and an elite team, but they got talent on that. They got talent on that roster. Offensively, you got 2 great edge rushers, Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker. Like they got players. Packers could lose this game. And it's not because it's a trap game. Don't flatter yourself. The NFL's just really, really competitive. I am anti-trap game. I just want to say that off the top. I have a couple other points that I want to make about the Packers, and I want to take some of your calls as well. 608-321-1670 to you next. Back in 3 minutes.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
the Wisco Sports Show. Appreciate you being here. Mike Clemens going to be with us in about an hour and 10 minutes, and I am so excited to connect with Mike because we haven't really had him throughout this season, so I'm excited to connect with him. But also, like selfishly, for the content purposes of the show, the coordinator is speaking a little bit later on in the day than they have the last couple weeks. So just kind of as the show was starting, Rich Bisaccia was speaking, I see Adam Stenovich is speaking, and I assume Jeff Hafley is going to speak as well. And I really am interested to hear what Hafley in particular says to say. Interested to hear what he says at the podium. Because I thought Sunday was probably the most complete defensive performance and a really, really elite defensive performance. Guys all over the place making plays. So I'm excited to hear from Jeff Hafley, and we'll get that accounting from Mike Clemens, who's there in the auditorium as we speak. Let's take some of your calls. Whether you want to talk Packers, I explained in our opening segment, if you're just joining us, like I'm anti-trap game. I don't think trap games in the NFL exist. All these teams are good enough to beat each other on any given Sunday. I think the same in college football outside of like 3 or 4 programs, maybe if that. I just think trap game it's a myth. I don't think they're real. So if you have thoughts on that or any preliminary thoughts on Packers-Jaguars as we start to really zero in on this game on Sunday, would love to take your calls. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Tony from Texas.
Hey, Tony.
How you doing?
I'm doing great today. How are you?
Good to hear. Yeah, we've been bagging on the NBA pretty hard the last couple of days, which they deserve. I got to say that Clipper Arena is pretty cool. It's right next to SoFi, so it's in Inglewood. So it's pretty cool looking structure.
Yeah, it was a cool. I tuned in just to see it. That got me to watch a little bit of the second game on ESPN last night for sure.
Yeah, Steve Ballmer gets to have his little playground, act like an idiot, and have fun. Why not?
Yeah.
I got to say this about Joel Embiid though. The funniest thing to come out of that game with the Bucks, and the Bucks did look good. I got to give the Bucks props. Very business-like win, took care of business. But the Joel Embiid thing, he's getting investigated for participation. So not only will Joel Embiid never win an NBA title, he's not even getting a participation ribbon, Grant. It's crazy.
I never thought of it that way. I think it's a window into how Embiid operates, right? And this isn't a personal attack, but the way the NBA season is set up, Tony, and you're a basketball coach, so you understand this. This season is long. It's a grind. It's a war of attrition, right? And the playoffs in and of themselves are long. These 7-game wars. You need to be wired a certain way to play at an elite level at the end of the postseason after all those games. Some guys can do it. Some guys can't. And it's no surprise that Embiid, who has been unable to do that so far, is kind of seemingly okay with just sitting out opening night at home. Like those two things connect in my mind, at least for a player.
Yeah, not exactly Bird versus Magic here. I don't know what Joel makes. It probably makes about $60 million or so. But yeah, it's kind of a joke. But Bucks look good. Great to see the Bucks look good. We'll see. I thought Doc was actually coaching his ass off. So
there's some nice sets. There were a couple. I think of one. I guess if you're looking at it from the top of the key, there was one play in the right side corner where I think Giannis and Dame ran a pick and roll that then kind of converged into a Dame Brook Lopez dribble handoff, and then someone cut to the rim. Like, I'm not going to sit here and break down the film for for game 1 of 82, but I thought there were some nice motions, and I feel a lot more comfortable and confident in Gary Trent Jr., DeLon Wright, and what I saw from Taurean Prince, at least through one game, than the players whose minutes they're replacing from last year. That was a positive from last night, too.
Okay, you're comfortable, you're confident. Are you curious about anything?
The 3 C's? If Cohen Roller's on hold, maybe he'll have 3 C's for us today. But I'm all 3 of those things. I'm less curious. I'm curious to see how the season goes, but confident and comfortable with at least the first game.
I'm curious how much Middleton plays. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
So the NFL, you're absolutely right. Your take's absolutely right. NFL, week to week, you can lose any game. They're not going to overlook the Jaguars. But a point that I want to make is I see Quay is practicing and so is Wyatt. So they're both practicing. A lot of these NFL guys, they're from Georgia, Northern California, Northern Florida. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
They want to play. Their family gets to see them, close to their hometown. I think Wicks is from around there. So a lot of these guys are from the southeast part of the country. They're going to want to show up and play. Trust me. If they lose, it's not because they didn't try.
So that's a good take. And the injury report, Tony, I appreciate it. I just got a couple other callers I want to get to this segment. Something that I probably should have mentioned in the first segment, but I'm glad, Tony, you brought it up. The only Packer that didn't practice today was Corey Ballantyne. Myers and Jenkins, 2 offensive linemen, Elton Jenkins and Josh Myers, were both dealing with injuries. They were both back at practice today. Devontae Wyatt's back at practice again today. He spoke I think yesterday, all the days start to run together. Today feels like Friday. I'm turned around this week for whatever reason. Devontae Wyatt basically said I should be able to go on Sunday. Him practicing again today is really nice. This defensive line that probably had their best performance of the year on Sunday is getting Jonathan Ford back, who's probably going to be one of their better run stuffers. He's coming back into the fold. And now Devontae Wyatt, who got off to an awesome start as a pass rushing playmaking defensive line, he's back in there too. So Jeff Hafley just has a whole war chest of different players who can do all these different things along the defensive line and the edge rusher positions. I don't know if there's one true elite player, one crazy game-wrecking player, but there's a lot of really good players. And in a position of depth, both at outside edge rusher, linebacker, and defensive line, I think that's valuable. Quay Walker also back at practice today. Now, Matt LaFleur said afterwards he hasn't cleared concussion protocol fully. They can't confirm or deny whether he'll be able to play yet, but he's progressed through concussion protocol to a point where he can practice, which, if nothing else, is a step in the right direction. And for how nasty that concussion kind of looked in real time on Sunday, I would say a terrific development. Corey Ballantyne, the only Packer not practicing, they're pretty darn healthy. This team's in a good spot. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
I was on hold.
Cone. I could feel it. Now, I don't want to box you in. I don't want to force you to ask me for 3 C's, comfortable, confident, and curious. But I know that's a bit that you enjoy.
Yeah, I do enjoy it, but I don't think I have that in me today. I was actually wanting to talk NBA because, going into the season, wasn't really looking forward to it, but I had a good time watching NBA basketball last night. Bucks took care of business. Dame Lillard looked great. And Area 39 for my Phoenix Suns.
How about that?
Playing crazy. All your stars play the first game of the season.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild development. Look, I did a lot of whining about the NBA last night, and I feel okay about it because I watched some games last night. I enjoyed it, and now we're talking about it today. I don't just have some vendetta. I don't have an agenda, right? Yesterday, a lot of the news surrounding the opening week of the NBA has bothered me, and I'm not the only one. Like, every show that I listen to, everyone's like, ugh. Even people who I know love the league and love basketball more than most, they're like, oh, it's kind of a bummer. But I enjoyed the Bucks game, and that Intuit, is it the Intuit Dome? That was cool. That was freaking cool. That wall behind the hoop, and that was a really good game with your Phoenix Suns that came down to the wire.
Yeah, and it's refreshing to see these billionaires that own these teams like actually give a crap about the product they give their fans.
Yeah,
I mean that arena is built strictly for the fans. It's not about ripping off the taxpayers, putting concrete in every place possible, parking lots. It looks like it's a good fan atmosphere. So, respect to Steve Ballmer. I think he's the better of the two from Microsoft. I don't know what Bill Gates is doing, but he's not helping out any NBA fan bases.
No, I'm sure he's working on like some dumb philanthropy thing or something. It does cost. I did see that it costs $70 to park at that Intuit Dome, but I suppose it's not that out of the ordinary for Los Angeles. Like, how much does it cost to park in downtown Phoenix if you go down to like Chase Field or something?
$15.
Okay. 70 is pretty nuts.
Crazy.
Yeah,
70 is insane. But it is LA, so what to expect. Speaking of LA, JJ Redick, we knew this going in was going to be just an annoying head coach.
Yeah.
Did you see his comments he gave about the NBA using brand new basketballs to start the season?
Well, so he said after the game, this would have been on Tuesday night, on opening night. He said, for anyone who missed it, I'm gonna have a conversation with the league about not forcing us to play with brand new basketballs. And I saw that and I'm like, oh, that's JJ Redick just he's being a dick. That's what he is. And then today I saw a clip Dave McMenamin tweeted out. JJ Redick kind of walked those comments back. He's like, look, you guys got to understand too. It's a little bit of a bit. I'll get that audio. And I'm like, dude, God, he annoys me, but he might be good for content, Cone. So I might have to accept that he annoys me and accept that he's a good thing and root for him to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's good for like the overall, discourse around the NBA, but man, it's going to be annoying. And then last two things before I go.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that Penn State, a pronounced organization with their history, is dealing with this issue. Just could not happen to a more stable college organization. I mean,
well, and James Franklin dealt with this at the
eye.
end at Vanderbilt too. So it's a perfect marriage. It's James Franklin and it's the program, the University of Penn State. You're absolutely right.
And then finally, year 3, Johnny Davis tips off this evening. So looking forward to that. I think he's due for a breakout season.
He had a good preseason. You know what? And I brought this up recording a podcast with our friends Paul and Bart earlier today. Jalen Suggs is getting a $150 million contract. I watched Johnny Davis cook that guy, Mitchell Hall in lacrosse, a couple of years ago. Probably a good amount of years ago now. When would that have been? 2019? 2020? Oof, God, a long time ago now. I still have plenty of Johnny Davis stock, but to be honest, that's because no one else would buy it, even if I tried to sell it. 608-321-1670. One more call, then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, I just have one question for you. Sobrock or Continuum?
Are you filing your nails?
No,
What are you doing?
I'm driving.
Oh, what is it that I hear?
My dog is panting.
Oh, that's a dog. Well, definitely Continuum, Ryan, if we're ranking albums. Definitely Continuum, but that doesn't mean that I... Kono has talked smack about Sobrock, so you make it clear I like both, but definitely Continuum.
Yeah, it is the most popular one. There's something about the search for everything, though, too. That vibe was incredible.
Very
But
solid.
just want to say how grateful I am just that this Packers team is as healthy as it is, and I could not have laughed any harder when I saw that Robert Saleh joined the Packers staff in his fluid role. Do you have any sort of insight as to what that might be exactly? Is he going to be like a offensive analyst?
Well, yeah, he's watching the offense, and I'm sure Mike, who's going to be here in about an hour, will give us as much information as possible. I think Matt LaFleur in his press conference yesterday kind of came across, Ryan, and he was like, look, he's here to watch the offense, give us some tips. He's staying around football. Like, I don't think that this was a role that was overthought. I don't think they drafted pages of a contract with job duties. Like, hey, man, come hang out in Green Bay for a couple days, stay around the game. Just let us pick your brain a little bit on what you see with our offense, and we can catch up. Like, I don't think it's that serious.
Yeah, because certainly you don't want to have any sort of miscommunication by actions made to potentially just disrupt what Jeff Hafley's got going on. Not to say that his defense couldn't be improved in certain areas, but obviously as someone who is a former, at least collegiate head coach, you certainly, with a guy in Saleh who's a prior NFL head coach, you don't want any potential bruising of any egos or anything. Not that would potentially happen. I mean, any defensive staff that could add Robert Saleh would be made better by having him there.
Yeah, and I think Jeff Hafley's a big boy. Ryan, I appreciate it, and I like the album ranking content always. I think Jeff Hafley's a big boy. Like, I don't think Jeff Hafley's going to get depressed if all of a sudden he's chatting with Robert Saleh about defense. All these guys know each other on some level, but I don't know. I think it's a good fit for everyone around. It's like, hey, you can help us this way. You're my boy, so come visit in Green Bay for a little while, stay around the game, give you a tour, show you the joint. I don't know. It's not something ever, I was saying, I was doing a podcast earlier today with Paul Immig and Winkler, and we're talking about it. It's like, what do you make of Robert Saleh being there? I don't know that there's anything to be made from it. It's just, he's just checking in and being around football. Like, I don't think it's something that needs to be overthought. It's cool. And I think the Packers are probably getting a little benefit from it, but it's definitely not something that I think was schemed for weeks, and the Packers had to dot all these I's and cross all these T's. It's just two coaches. It's just coaches being coaches, guys being guys. Let's take a couple-minute break. We'll come back. Mike Clemens an hour away. He'll bring us the latest on all this. I can't wait to talk with Mike. More of the Wisco Sports Show. I'll get to some of your texts coming up next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think especially when it came down to the paint, Brook was a beast. Giannis was a beast protecting the paint. That's what we've talked about. Our base defense of just getting stops and protecting the paint like we want to. I thought, our bigs did a great job of that.
That's Damian Lillard last night. I didn't think we talked much about the Bucks tonight, and I still think the meat and potatoes of tonight's show going to be about the Packers. But I think it's cool. Can we collectively pat ourselves on the back a little bit? We spent most of the show last night kind of complaining about the state of the NBA. And then I began the show for a couple minutes like, you know what, though? Credit to the Bucks and their performance last night. I like watching them. They seem to have I don't know if Tony said it or Cone said it, but a very professional, very grown-up win. It's like, hey, this other team, they got stars sitting out already, and the Bucks just kind of showed up and took care of business, even with some new faces. And No, I liked watching the Bucks last night, and I also watched a little bit of the late game, and I enjoyed that. We can call a spade on this show. We don't stick to our agendas. We're not rigid. We can complain about a league or a team or bash a player or a coach one day and then turn around the next day and be like, hey, hand up, credit where credit is due. I actually enjoyed watching that game. Or this player who normally doesn't impress me actually did something nice last night. I shout out to the collective of the show. I don't know how much time we're going to spend on the Bucks, but I did enjoy parts of the game. I turned it off with a couple minutes left. I don't watch NBA games when they're out of hand. There's just not much to be gained. And also we were trying to watch Survivor. Like we had a busy night of television last night, a lot going on in our household. 608-321-1670. I got the Packers ball rolling tonight, at least by talking about how I don't believe in trap games. I think top to bottom, the NFL, even the best teams and the worst teams, there's not enough of a difference to where any team upsetting another is completely inconceivable. In college football, sure. I think in college football, there's only 3 or 4 teams that can realistically claim trap game. Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State. Those teams can claim, oh, USC, they lost to Maryland, it was a trap game. No, USC is just not quite good enough. And it's college football. Most teams, even once in a blue moon, every couple of decades, like we saw with Vanderbilt, it can happen. Right? That doesn't mean it was a trap game. It just means that happens in sports. It happens in football. So I'm not on trap game watch. I'm simply excited to see if the Packers bring their A game and play well enough. And to Ryan's point before the last break, and I should probably hammer this point home further, the Packers are really healthy. They have all of their wide receivers and all their tight ends. Luke Musgrave is hurt. I guess that's the one piece they're missing on offense. But Emmanuel Wilson has been nice. Josh Jacobs has been nice. I'm excited for Marshawn Lloyd to get back because I don't even know that Josh Jacobs needs to get the amount of carries that he's getting now. I saw Bill Barnwell at ESPN put out a story that a lot of Packers fans were ticked about earlier today because he said Josh Jacobs has been disappointing for the Packers. His yardage totals have been good. He's had explosive plays. He's gotten plenty of touches. I don't know that it's been sexy, but I don't know that they brought in Josh Jacobs to be sexy. I think they brought Josh Jacobs in to be a stable running back one in an offense that needs a stable running back one. And to be a guy who late in the season can inflict some punishment in the cold weather in the games that matter most. And I think Josh Jacobs will be that. And I don't mind when Marshawn Lloyd gets back and healthy, give him some carries too. I don't need Josh Jacobs to be this bell cow. I know he's a good back. He knows he's a good back. He got his contract. What's he got to prove? Just be healthy and be ready to play your best football at the right time of the year. That's what Josh Jacobs is here for. That's why they brought him in. So offensively, other than Lloyd and Musgrave, they've been pretty healthy, but Tucker Kraft has been so great. And honestly, Ben Sims will probably catch a touchdown or two at some point in the season. If I was a Ben Sims type tight end, I would want to play in Matt LaFleur's offense. Just go block your tail off, go mix it up, and every once in a while be ready for a couple passes because they're going to come your way. It's just how the scheme works. Defensively, they're about as healthy gets. They're healthy at safety. They're healthy at linebacker. Knock on wood that Quay Walker continues to progress and his concussion symptoms continue to deteriorate so he could be on the field on Sunday. But the fact that even he's back at practice Thursday of this week is a great sign considering how nasty that hit looked. What did he take a knee to the side of the helmet on Sunday? The fact that he could be back on Sunday is huge. Jonathan Ford's coming back. Devontae Wyatt's coming back. Like, this defensive front might not include a superstar. There might not be an Aaron Donald on the defensive line, or probably a better comparison is like a Chris Jones. I know Aaron Donald is generationally great. I think Chris Jones is pretty great too, but probably only one Aaron Donald. I don't know that they have a dominant game-breaking superstar on the defensive line, but they got a lot of guys I like and a lot of guys who could pop up and have a big game at any time. Devontae Wyatt is a pass rusher. Kenny Clark is kind of your all-around playmaking nose tackle. Jonathan Ford is more of a run stuffer. Carl Brooks graded really well amongst his peers, interior defensive linemen, 2 weeks ago against Arizona. He's really started to show a little bit. Guy that we were excited about in the offseason as well. TJ Slayton, you keep going. There's a lot of guys to be really excited about. Jeff Hafley has a long bench of defensive linemen to rotate and edge rushers as well. I'd like to start seeing a little bit more from Lucas Van Ness, but I guess I'm not totally shocked that the start to his year has been pretty quiet. Who is he compared to when he was drafted? Rashawn Gary. We're 6 years into Rashawn Gary's career, and we're still waiting. So I'm not totally shocked, although I am a little disappointed because I thought maybe just maybe this dude's ready to make a jump. I don't know. Not quite. But I'd rather have a deep group of edge rushers and defensive linemen than a shallow group that's, spearheaded by one star, one great player. 608-321-1670 if you have something to add on the Packers or the Bucks as well. You can tweet me as well at Wisco Grant. You can comment on the live stream. It's mostly Rick and Mike going back, hey, I appreciate you guys listening and keeping the chat busy over there. Mike Clemens going to join us in about 45 minutes, unless something changes with Packer media availability. I'm trying to watch out of one corner of my eye what coordinators are saying. I saw that, I can't think of his name. Adam Stenavich. He was speaking, and someone commented on the live stream, Stanovich's presser was kind of a snoozer. Yeah, I've listened before. He is Adam Stenavich. He did talk about Romeo Dobbs' frustration. I'm just going to read you this tweet from Matt Schneidman. Adam Stenavich on Romeo Dobbs' success post-suspension. We've seen that with him all camp, and I think part of the thing that led up to his frustration was just not getting those results on the field, which is what Bill Huber reported. Why everyone else in Packers fandom wanted to make, well, there must be something else going on. Or maybe the simplest explanation is the right one. Like, it's just funny how people just doubted Bill Huber for some reason. I don't know. Bill's on the network all the time. He's on with Bill the other day. Bill does great work. He's plugged in. He's there. You hear him asking as many questions in press conferences as just about anybody else. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
What's going on, Grant? It's Wally in Wisconsin.
Hey, Wally. What's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, I know you mentioned league last time you were on. The politics of our league friend group are getting difficult right now. I Call of Duty's coming out. I might need to, I don't know if I want to take a break from league, especially with the Timo update and changes coming in ARAM. I'm not sure, but I might become a Black Ops guy at the end of this week. I might be answering the Call of Duty.
I don't know. I used to be a big Call of Duty guy, and I just can't compete. I can't compete.
Did Warzone ruin it? I contend that Warzone ruined it.
I would agree. There's too many sweats out there now.
Oh, it's so sweaty. It's all about movement. I watch these Black Ops highlights. It's people flying around, jumping, sliding. I just want to shoot people. I don't want to run around obstacle courses. I just want to use a gun with a cool camo. But the world is passing people like us by, Wally. It's all about the middle schoolers. It's about the sweats now.
It's terrible. But enough of video games.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to call about the Bucks, actually. So
yeah.
I was super excited with what I saw from the Bucks, offensively and defensively. I think TJ Windish tweeted out a clip from Brooke, and he kind of, I forget the exact question or his wording was, like, you're off to a great start with the blocks, 6 blocks last night. He said it all comes down to the point of attack. It's refreshing to see our lead defenders not just give the old Olay to the guys with the ball at the top of the key. So, and then when you have a guy at your hip, it makes it a lot harder to go up strong all the time. And so Brooke and Giannis are able there and to clean up. And that's kind of what Doc's defense is built on. So that was awesome to see last night. And offensively, I think we did some really, really good things. I really like the pick and roll with Gary Trent Jr. and Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
They did a look where Giannis would set the ball screen and he would go to the mid post or so, and then they put Dame in the corner, and then Gary Trent Jr. would just go to the weak side. And so then it was Giannis and Dame on one side. So you can't leave Dame in the corner. And then if you're sending a double, you got to come from very far. Giannis loves a quick drop, step, dunk. So I was super excited and very optimistic about this season.
And you know what's funny is, like, the Dame Giannis pick and roll or the Brooke Lopez Damian Lillard high screen and roll might even be more effective with Joel Embiid out there, because that's the defender you're drawing out. You know what I mean? Like, there are certainly lots of challenges that Joel Embiid presents, but like, if Embiid would have been out there last night, I think a lot of the concepts they were running, those are the types of concepts that you work to try to expose a player like Joel Embiid. You try to draw him away from the basket. A lot of those concepts transfer really well when you're playing a Sixers team with the Joel Embiid on the floor.
100%. And I think we're still going to be hard pressed to beat the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics are loaded. Derek White's really good off-ball defender, on-ball defender. And it seems like Jaylen Brown's going to make a couple steps forward. I'm indifferent about Jason Tatum. He's good, but I don't think he's the superstar everyone claims he is.
Well, you are correct.
But the other thing I wanted to ask about, have you seen this stuff coming out of the Clippers that their old athletic trainer is suing them for how they handled Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah. And I suppose it's possible, and I mentioned this earlier, Wally. I just got to go to a break. I appreciate the call, and sorry to force you to talk about video games. It's the last time we chatted, we talked about it. I don't know what to think, because it's totally believable that an NBA team would want to pressure a player like Kawhi Leonard. The Clippers gave up a lot to get him. They're building a new building. Like, it stands to reason that the Clippers would maybe apply a little pressure to want Kawhi Leonard to play. I've also seen Kawhi do this before. Like, Kawhi left San Antonio because he claimed, right or wrong, it's like, hey, these guys don't allow me to listen to my body. They don't allow me and my trainers to go about taking care of my body the way that I want. I want out. Like, I have a hard time believing that it's always everyone else's fault. And by the way, if the Clippers were pressuring Kawhi in any way to play, I guess sue them. Literally, they're an NBA team. They're paying you to play basketball, and you don't play enough basketball. So I don't know. I think it's a coin flip chance that Kawhi doesn't play for the Clippers again. But what does a trade look like, and what is he worth, and is he even going to play? Like, he's out indefinitely right now, according to Shams. It's a really messy situation. Thank you for the call, Wally. That's interesting. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1 next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show, about a half hour away from Mike Clemens. Going to get the latest from what's going on in Green Bay. Coordinators spoke today. Jeff Hafley's an interesting listen always. Stenavich is Stenavich. It's not personal. He's just not a super engaging press conference speaker. But Jeff Hafley has been. That's not it's not totally surprising. He was a college head coach. People who are head coaches typically handle the media a little bit better, with the exception of James Franklin. We talked about that a little bit earlier. When we come back after 5 o'clock, I want to try to bring you some quotes from Stenavich, from Bisaccia, try to give you a little bit on what the coordinators said before we get to Mike Clemens. I also want to talk about a comment that Mina Kimes made on ESPN that I think is really good, and I think it's pertinent to the way that Jordan Love has been playing, right? A lot of people have compared him to Favre, which I think loosely is fine. Like Favre threw picks. He was more of a gunslinger. Jordan Love throws more picks, a little bit more of a gunslinger. Okay, more than Rodgers, yeah. But if those are our only two frames of reference, like we're going to have a difficult time evaluating and contextualizing quarterbacks. The Packers have also got a lot of big plays out of it. I believe I've seen the term big game hunter on Twitter used by Bukowski, who is up my butt today, and I don't appreciate it, by the way, Pete, on the internet. There's thousands of people online that you try to fight I don't need to be one of them. I just think that Jordan Love creating as many big plays for the Packers as he has this year is important for a couple of reasons, and it goes past just, big plays are fun, touchdowns are fun. Well, true, but I think the current climate of the defense, especially some of the defenses in this division that they're going to have to play, I think an offense needs to be aggressive, and I think Jordan Love needs to be aggressive. This offense needs to be able to hit home runs. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I want to play you a comment that I heard on ESPN from actually Mina Kimes and Alex Smith were talking about it. I thought some really good points were made. So we'll get into that coming up in a bit. Mike Clemens, like I said, coming up as well. I'll do my best to share anything. I have a comment from Rich Bisaccia that I'm excited to share with you. It's coming up in a few minutes as well. Hour number 2, the Wisco Sports Show, coming up in just 2 minutes. Sports update from Zach Heilper, no commercials. We'll be right back.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Packers hit the practice field again today as they continue to prep for their trip to Jacksonville coming up on Sunday. They did so for a second day with a new face on the sideline. Former Jets head coach Robert Saleh was out there again, a very good friend of Coach Matt LaFleur. Saleh was fired earlier this month after a little more than 3 seasons on the job in New York. Saleh is a very good defensive mind, but that won't be where he's helping the Packers, and that's for a reason. LaFleur really likes what first-year defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley and his staff are doing.
I don't want to do that. I think Haf and our defensive staff have a great thing going right now, and I totally trust them. And so I think it's year one. He's kind of got to go through it himself, and so I don't want to do that.
Instead, Saleh going to be helping on the offensive side of the ball, looking at how defenses are attacking the Packers. LaFleur called the situation fluid in terms of how much Saleh would be around. Again, the Packers are at Jacksonville on Sunday. Kick is at noon. Turning to the Badgers, they will welcome in the number 3 team in the country in Penn State on Saturday night. Wisconsin looking for its first win over a top 3 team since beating Ohio State in 2010. Kick on Saturday is at 6:30.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here to keep Wisconsin strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Bucs opened the year last night with a win. Now they will shift their focus to their home opener, which is coming up tomorrow night against the Bulls. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heilper.
So we've got to play a consistent 4 quarters against this team. This is a very good team. And again, it's the National Football League, so you better get ready to play your best each and every week.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
I swear, I've had it. I've had enough. I am so over Microsoft Teams. I was trying to cut a little bit of audio during this 2-minute update so I could play it on the air, because I kind of need to have audio saved and cut and prepared. Otherwise, it sounds really janky on the live stream. It sounds fine on the radio. And in a pinch, like, I don't mind leaving the live stream audience out to dry just a little bit, because it's a radio show first. And again, if it's a small thing, it's not really a huge deal. But there's this soundbite that I want to play from ESPN, and I'm getting it ready. And I swear, Microsoft Teams is like the friend that just always finds a way to appear. It's just like I'll be working on my computer. I'll be typing in my Google Drive. I'll be doing this, that, and the other thing. And Microsoft Teams out of nowhere will just be like, now? All right, I'll open. It's like, God, no, not. I've never needed you. And I probably never will again. If all of my coworkers would just be adults and use Zoom, and I don't even know who that's directed to, but like Teams, God, I hate Teams. It just, I'll restart my computer when I'm playing video games or something, just to do an update or whatever. I'll be working on cutting sound. Teams is like, now. It's like, no one asked for you, and no one ever has. Stop opening all the time on my computer. I digress. Mike Clemens going to join us in about a half hour. Would love to continue to take your calls on the Bucks or the Packers. I'm surprised I've gotten so many Bucks calls today, which I guess is great, because I was a little worried about the state of the NBA as the season got started, but I think we all tuned in to watch last night. It's like, oh, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to watch Damian Lillard score 30. It's kind of fun to watch the Suns and the Clippers, that Intuit Dome. That's pretty cool. It was a fun broadcast. New stadium, kind of some new, I don't want to say gimmicks, because I don't think some of the things in the Intuit Dome are gimmicks. It's just cool new things that I haven't seen in a stadium before. I do have this cut from ESPN from Mina Kimes and Alex Smith that I want to play you, kind of hinting at the big nature or the big play creation nature of the Packers offense and the Lions as well, and why big swings are kind of required out of a lot of offenses in today's NFL. And Jordan Love, not afraid to take big swings. So I'll play that audio for you here in a minute or two. Oh, I was going to go to the phone calls, but the call dropped. So let's just listen to this. This is Mina Kimes and Alex Smith on one of the Omaha podcasts, Omaha Productions at ESPN, talking about how you need to meet aggressive defenses like Brian Flores' defense with aggression of your own. And I thought this was really insightful and might just give Packers fans a good data point for thinking about Jordan Love's play style, which is big swings can lead to big mistakes, but big swings can also lead to big plays and explosive plays for the offense.
This game, he went up against a defense that has really stymied.
It's talking about Jared Goff, by the way, against Brian Flores and the Vikings.
This game, he went up against a defense that has really stymied much of the NFL. And that's, of course, Brian Flores' Vikings unit. And watching them, Alex, it felt like they had the answers for blitzes and the simulated pressures and early downs that we really haven't seen any offense do. A little bit of Green Bay, but they did it at a level that we have not seen this year.
You know, the thing I loved is I think when you go up against these hyper aggressive defenses, you actually have to like match their aggressiveness.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way to combat it. And so often I think teams go the other way. We can't have negative plays and they kind of guard. And then I think it actually just works against you. And so it's a nature of sometimes they are going to make a play and they're going to get sacks, which they did. But at the same time, if we can hit them for a few times, obviously there's huge big play potential. And you could see it in their game plan.
Goff, for me, is a big winner given the level of competition, you know, that defense has looked like one of the best in the NFL. And I love what you said about matching aggression with aggression and how important that is, because the thing about all of that crazy stuff they do, there's vulnerabilities, there's zones being vacated. There's, you know, like if you're willing to rip that ball, you can, but definitely saw Jared Goff doing it in this one. And just a really, really special performance.
I like what Alex Smith, and I think Alex Smith is a good analyst. I liked what he had to say about, you know, when offenses and quarterbacks and play callers go against really aggressive defenses, there's almost a tendency to try to play conservative. Well, we don't want to make the big mistake. Well, I think against a defense like Brian Flores, or just think about, you know, I think about Wink Martindale, who's with the Giants, right? And the type of kind of, I don't know, like this cowboy approach. We're going to bring pressure from everywhere. We're going to send guys flying all over the place. Like we're going to take it to you type of defense. there's this tendency from quarterbacks and from offensive coordinators and, offenses, when you go against defenses like that, we got to be buttoned up and we can't turn the ball over. We can't make any mistakes. We got to stay ahead of the sticks. I think when you play against a defense like Brian Flores, let's just use that as the main example because that's the one they mentioned in the clip. And I think that's the defense the Packers are going to have to continue to, play against, obviously in the division. You need to bake in the fact that you're probably going to make some mistakes. It's really hard for a defense like the Vikings to come after you play after play after play with all the chaos and all the issues they create. It's really hard to pitch a perfect game against a defense like that. You almost need to bake in a couple of mistakes. So you might as well make those mistakes trying to land body blows of your own. And what did Jared Goff do against the Vikings? They took shots. They created explosive. Yeah, they had negative plays too. But I just don't think you can nickel and dime your way against a really aggressive defense. And I think Jordan Love has let's say a fitting personality and a fitting play style to go against a team like the Vikings. And I loved what I think it was Mina Kimes. I don't remember if it was Alex Smith or Mina Kimes in that clip. Basically said, hey, when guys are flying all over the place and blitzers are coming from all over the field, they're vacating a space somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, defenses must rob Peter to pay Paul. Like, if you are blitzing 6 guys, those are 2 fewer guys that aren't here. If you're bringing a corner from this side of the field to that side of the field, well, then this side of the field's vacated. You're a defensive coordinator like Brian Flores or even Jeff Hafley, who brought guys all around and moved guys all around. Like, you are vacating spaces to try to make plays. And your hope as a defensive coordinator, and Brian Flores, your hope is you create enough negative plays, you create enough disruptive plays where the big plays that you create, they don't hurt you as much. It's a ledger, right? You want to be more on the disruptive, turnover, game-breaking type of plays than the back-breaking, explosive plays you give up. And there are defensive coordinators around the league too. This is why I think it's so funny. In the NFC North, you have the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings just throwing haymakers on both sides of the ball. You got Sam Darnold just uncorking it. Jordan Love, I don't have to tell you, uncorking it. Jared Goff last week. Yeah, they run the ball and they can pummel you play after play, but they also love letting it hang out. Like, this NFC North, man, is a laser light show on both sides of the ball. These defenses play with reckless abandon. These offenses play with reckless abandon. And then you go to the AFC, you watch the Chiefs. Like, most teams are playing too high against the Chiefs, and they're having to nickel and dime. And they're having to go inch by inch by inch. Like, in the AFC with the Chiefs and with the Bills, like, Josh Allen doesn't have a lot of deep shots down the field this year. He's got a couple, but, like, his big play potential, his passing yard potential, his explosive potential, it hasn't really been there this year. Like, in one conference of some of these teams, you have a very quiet darts tournament going on. And then in the other conference, you have guys are fighting with shock, just smoke and dust everywhere. Now, I prefer the style that we're seeing in the NFC North. This is more fun. Now, I think you can get into trouble. Like, I think a defense like Brian Flores, there's more volatility. You can give up a big play at any time. You can create a big play at any time. But God, is it entertaining football. Like, the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings are just going for broke offensively and defensively at all times. And it's an awesome brand of football. And then you see teams going too high on Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and you can be effective doing both things, but like, do we really want Patrick Mahomes to be like, hey, 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions guy through 8 weeks? That's lame. That's no fun. Give me what Jordan Love or Sam Darnold or Jared Goff has done. These guys are letting it hang. And then the defenses are letting it hang too. It's a really fun brand of football, but what you can't do, to Alex Smith's point, is you can't tell Jordan Love, hey, don't try to create any big plays. You need the big plays, especially against the type of defenses that are kind of dominating and kind of running the NFC North right now. You can't take away the big plays for fear of making mistakes, because the mistakes are going to happen. The play style, I mean, it's just too explosive. The ball's going to get knocked up in the air. Sacks are going to happen. Those plays are going to happen regardless. So you got to try to land body blows of your own in the meantime. I mean, it's just 3 teams, offense and defense, just throwing hooks, play after play after play after play. And then over in the AFC, you have this much more mild little chess match going on. It's kind of funny. Football's a funny sport. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Good evening, Grant.
Good evening,
Darnell.
Darnell. How are you?
I'm doing well. I wanted
Excellent.
to pick
Quite.
your brain about something.
Yes.
Fantasy football related.
Okay.
So I know that you and Bill you talk with your fantasy experts and whatnot.
We did have
during
Charch
the
on
Bill
today,
Michaels
yes.
show. But in my house, I'm the fantasy expert between me and my wife, and she has her fantasy league with her work that she has now won 2 straight years, thanks to me. Which little humble brag there.
I was gonna say, I don't know if there was anything humble about it. I think it was just a brag.
It was just definitely just a brag. But anyways, she's always wondering, oh, well, why is it so easy for you to choose between like one player and another when their projections are similar, right? Like one player is projected to get 12.5 points, the other one's projected to get 13. And she always asks me, well, why is it so easy for you to choose between those 2 players? And almost always I choose the player that I like, like the player that I would rather watch and would like to do well and actually care about as a human being, which is probably the wrong way of going about these things.
Yo, fantasy football is supposed to be fun. Like, you're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to be excited about the players you're playing too. I don't mind that approach.
For instance, a couple of weeks ago, the Packers played the Cardinals, right? And she has Marvin Harrison Jr. on her team, and she also has Jaden Reed on her team, and they were very, very similar in projections for that week. And she's like, "Well, it looks like Marvin Harrison's going to be projected to get more," and I was like, "Well, I wouldn't play Marvin Harrison Jr. not for a second. Why? Because then I have to root against my Packers. On Sunday.
Yes.
I can't in good faith do that. So I was like, yeah, you should pick Jaden Reed. And guess what? Jaden Reed ended up with like 7 or 8 points, and Marvin Harrison had like 3. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and maybe kind of wanted your thoughts on how you go about your fantasy football league, and if you also play with your heart maybe more than your brain sometimes.
Well, my brain is so big, Darnell, it's hard for my heart to sometimes outweigh my Thank you for the call. I actually like this point, and you actually are setting me up to make a point that I made with Bill earlier that I wanted to bring up tonight. So you should always try to have fun in fantasy football. It's fun. And you can spend your money and you can play fantasy football however you want, but like, I don't understand it. Some people invest like hundreds of dollars into these leagues. It's like, well, if I don't have hundreds of dollars on the line, I'm not going to try. It's like, what do you mean try? Like, I'm not saying fantasy football is all luck, but it's a lot of luck, I feel like. So play the guys who are fun. Fantasy football is supposed to be fun. And I heard Charch talking about that last week when he's like, hey, starting Devontae Adams in his Jets debut on Sunday night, that's fun. And it was fun. I did it. It didn't work out for me, but it was fun. I had a good time. You know who deserves to be absolutely crushed for fantasy football purposes, but fantasy football is crossing over into real football here? I am so out on the Dolphins coach, Mike McDaniel. Like, I am, well, let me give you a little background. So in my work league, did I draft 2nd overall or 3rd overall? I can't remember, but I took Tyreek Hill. I ended up with Tyreek Hill. And I also have Devon A-Chain, the running back. So I'm pretty invested in the Dolphins offense, right? And I knew what A-Chain was. It's like, there's some injury volatility there. But what running back doesn't have injury volatility? You know what I mean? Like, they're all at risk to get hurt. So whatever. So I have those 2 guys. Tua goes down. And for 5 or 6 games now? It's like they can't even get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands. It's mind-boggling. And I get that fantasy football is not real life, and I shouldn't think less of a coach for fantasy football purposes. But my brother in Christ, you have Tyreek Hill on your team. Like, even Matt LaFleur found a way to get the ball to Christian Watson once or twice against the Titans when Malik Willis was playing. Like, you cannot not just one game, like well over a month's worth of games. You can't conceive of one play where it's like, hey, we just kind of want to get that Tyreek Hill guy who's really good. We just kind of want to get the ball in his hands. Like, I am so out on Mike McDaniel. I could not be more out on Mike McDaniel. If you can't get Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill the ball, sure, even with a backup quarterback, then you can't be my offensive coordinator. You definitely can't be my head coach. Like, I think Tua's fine to solid to could be quite good. Very good seems strong, but quite good maybe. It's like, dude, as an offensive coordinator and as a head coach, if you can't get Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill the ball, even let's say Tua, I don't know how many games he's going to end up missing. Let's say he misses 6 games just for the point of this conversation. If in 3 or 4 of those games, you can't pretty consistently get those amazing star receivers the ball, then I don't want you coaching my team. Like, that's such a joke to me. And that's a moment where fantasy football and real life kind of collide. It's like, yeah, it's fantasy football, but those are the Dolphins' 2 best players. How are they invisible? You're a non-serious coach coming up with non-serious game plans if your backup quarterback plan isn't, hey, let's get the ball into their hands as many ways as possible. Passing, rushing, screenplays. For God's sake, have them take a direct snap if that's what it takes. Just get the ball in their hand. Mike McDaniel's like, when's Tua back again? Like, Jesus. 608-321-1670. A couple texts. This one says, Zoom, why not Discord? Discord does everything Zoom and Teams does, but better. Yeah, but workplaces don't use Discord. At least mine doesn't. I feel like most don't. I use Discord when I play video games. We're talking about work. We're talking about professional settings. You think I have Microsoft Teams on my laptop because for being social? Come on now. Eric on I-9, he says, I think tonight is a trap game for the Vikings. No, the Rams are really well coached. The Rams could just beat them, Eric. The Vikings could show up and not be on their A game. That's not because it's a trap game. It's just because that's the NFL. And I know what you're doing, Eric. You're just giving me some. I know what you're doing. Cody in Sun Prairie. Hey, Grant. I thought the Bucks look great. If Lillard plays like this, they're a threat to win it all again. Giannis will continue to do Giannis things, and I agree. The additions around our bench, massive upgrade. Question for you: with the noise coming out of LA about Kawhi, what odds would you give the Bucks to package Middleton and necessary picks to get a deal done for Kawhi? Lillard, Giannis, and Kawhi would be a hell of a trio. 0% chance. It's so funny to me, and Cody, this is a fun hypothetical. It's a fun topic. Everyone treats Chris Middleton like he never plays in basketball games. Chris Middleton is so much more durable than Kawhi Leonard. And this fan base, like, he treats Chris Middleton like he's always walking around with crutches. Kawhi Leonard might not play at all this year. We realize that's in the cards, right? Like, Kawhi Leonard might not play at all this year. He might hold out from the Clippers. He might demand a trade, or his leg might just be pudding, and we don't know because that's how Kawhi operates. Like, I want absolutely nothing to do with Kawhi Leonard, and I can't imagine the Bucks do either. Thank you, Cody, though, for the text, and thank you for listening. One more text. UWM's finest Pat Baldwin also tips off tonight against the Wizards. Yes, shout out to Pat Baldwin. And wait. Okay, never mind. You meant for the Wizards. In my head, I thought of UWM, and I'm like, that's Bart Lundy now. Pat Baldwin doesn't coach. Also, everyone keep an eye on the northwest corner of the state. War on 94 week. It's Stout Homecoming, Stout Eau Claire. The one true rivalry that mentions Interstate 94. Never forget that. 608-321-1670. We'll get back to taking some of your calls next before Mike Clemens joins us at 5:35.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show. Mike Clemens going to join us in about 10 minutes. Hear a little bit from the Packers coordinators and others who spoke with the media between yesterday and today. Packers are remarkably healthy. And when the Packers have been banged up in the past, what's the training staff doing? Oh, why is this team so unlucky? Why are they always so injured? And I think for the most part, every team deals with injuries. Some teams have luckier years, but at some point in your season, you're going to deal with guys getting hurt at certain positions. I would just like to, now that the team is really healthy, the only Packer that didn't practice today is Corey Ballantyne, who basically hasn't played anyway. Like, we should recognize that. We should be excited about that. Devontae Wyatt and Jonathan Ford getting added into this defensive line that I think is really taken steps over the last couple of weeks. The edge rushers certainly did a much better job last week than they were doing earlier on in the year, forcing pressure and creating issues for CJ Stroud. Like, I just think this defense is a really good spot, and now they're getting healthier. So I am pleased as punch with the health of this team. Quay Walker being back at practice, he seized up. He was motionless after taking a knee to the side of the head, the helmet, last week. And the fact that he's back at practice. Now, that doesn't mean that he's cleared concussion protocol. He's just reached a point in concussion protocol where he can return to practice. There's an important difference, but I think being back at practice and progressing through the protocol is still a significant step and something that we should be excited about. If not for the Packers, just for Quay, because concussions are scary. 608-321-1670, if you would like to call. Another Clippers story, by the way. Los Angeles Clippers granted permission for PJ Tucker's agent Andre Buck to speak with other teams to facilitate working on a trade. Both sides continue working together while the veteran remains away from the team, waiting an opportunity to contribute to winning. He wants to contribute to winning. Bro, why not the Clipper? Like, try to contribute to the Clippers winning. And if you can't help the Clippers win, then what team are you supposed to help? Like, no, my skill set's limited to helping ready-made championship contenders. Like I say, you just want a ride on a really good team? That's kind of lame. 608-321-1670. Your thoughts on that or anything Packers related? Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Southside Scott.
Southside Scott, good evening. Hey, you're a Broncos fan. Do you know what absolutely blew my gourd open earlier today? Bo Nix and your Broncos are 10.5-point favorites over the Panthers. The Panthers stink, but still 10.5. That's a hell of a line.
That's why I was calling, because I actually got to listen to that part of the show during my lunch.
I figured maybe that had something to do with it, because you're not you call somewhat regularly, but you don't call just to call. Normally you have something to say. I was wondering if maybe you heard it.
Well, no, I heard it from you guys. I just wanted to say thank you for picking the Broncos. I feel privileged.
Well, it's nothing against your Broncos. I think Sean Payton is a very good coach, and I think that team is definitely trending in the right direction. I don't think Bo Nix is great, but they've been winning with Bo Nix. I think that line is more to show, like, look, nobody believes in the Panthers, and Bryce Young is starting, right, at altitude, too. Yeah, which is funny because he's so short. There's a joke in there to be workshopped, but it's getting late in the day. It's already 5:30.
Yeah, I believe in the defense more than I do the offense. So that's where I stand with them.
It's just interesting. I understand that the Panthers are bad. If they were playing, so what is the line if the Panthers are in Baltimore? Or if the Panthers are like, what if the Panthers and the Broncos are good, they're winning games. But if they were going up against an elite team, what is that line? 15? 13?
I was going to say 13 and a half, 14 and a half.
That's just absurd. I mean, good for your Broncos, though.
Hey, I'll take any chance we get to win to be above the Raiders. So.
Yeah, the Raiders. Well, okay, so I'm glad that you called in, Scott, because this is a perfect thing to talk about for a couple minutes before we get to Mike. I appreciate it. So just give me a sec. I'm very organized. Let me pull up our pick sheet. Listen to some of these spreads the second half of Sunday's slate. This is some of these. And I told Bill when we were doing picks, like, you get into the 3 o'clock games and then into the primetime games. So, well, a noon game, first and foremost, Detroit favored at home over Tennessee by 11.5. The Chargers, who have blown nobody's socks off, favored by 7.5 over New Orleans. Denver, 10.5 over Carolina. Kansas City, 9.5 over Vegas. Like, some of these spreads, these are big numbers. And they might not seem big, but like, when you're betting money for a team to cover a number, Kansas City, they've won a lot of games. I trust them to win any game with my life, but like to cover 9.5. Denver, I think they're much better than Carolina, but to cover 10.5, like it's a difficult pick to make. 608-321-1670. One more call, then we'll get to Mike Clemens. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This would be Tim from Sparta.
Hey, Tim from Sparta. Good evening. How you doing, partner?
Well, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Let me tell you, I got nothing going on except that I called in because of that fellow that wanted to get Kawhi Leonard.
Okay.
I'm driving down the road, and I almost pulled over and ran into a bridge abutment just so I didn't have to listen to any more of that.
It's an interesting theory.
I mean, my God, you have a guy that plays only when he wants to, claims he's hurt all the time, wants to maximize his – I mean, he's a great businessman. I mean, he's made more money than anybody relying on injuries so that he doesn't have to play more than – I think he's probably averaged, 25, 30 games a year for the last 4 or 5 years?
I'm going to look. Well, and there's just years where he's almost played nothing at all. So, like, the average would be kind of wonky. I don't know that you can paint his games per season with an average. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you know, but his game, his pay per game has got to be the greatest of all time.
Yeah, he's a good businessman. Yeah, he's played going backwards, he's played 52. Well, actually, so last year he played 68, then 52. He didn't play at all in 21-22, 52, 57, 69 games in 17-18. Yeah, I just don't know why anyone would want to sign up for that. And again, I don't want to bang on, I think it was Cody and Sun Prairie who texted in, but we're so insulated with Chris Middleton and the Bucks. We think Chris Middleton is so injury prone. I don't really think he is, honestly.
I don't think so either. I think that, but anyway, we got a long basketball season ahead of us, so we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I can say is the NFC North is absolutely the best division. Now, they may not have the best team, although I'd put Detroit up against anybody else. I'd put Green Bay if their defense plays like the last game against anybody else. But it's just amazing that the dumpster fire that was no longer is.
No, and I just think the NFC North too. And Tim, I got to run because we got to get to Mike. The NFC North is talented and well coached, but also all of these teams play a brand of football where they just send it all the time. Defense, offense, just throwing haymakers all the time. And they're going to make a lot of big plays. They're going to give up a lot of big plays. It's just a really entertaining division to boot as well. All right, Mike Clemens is going to join us next. We'll hear a little bit from Packers locker room and what he saw when the coordinator spoke just earlier this afternoon over the last couple of hours. Excited to have Mike. He'll join us next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I believe we're getting better. I believe in our staff. I believe in our players. We've gotten better each week, and I think we'll continue to get better. I'm not the type of guy that worries about that stuff. I've been a head coach. I've been a coordinator. I want to win football games, and I want to win a championship, and I'm not going to have anything distract me.
That's Jeff Hafley just a little bit ago in his press conference earlier today talking about the presence of Robert Saleh, saying, man, I don't care. We're trying to win. And I think it was nice from Matt LaFleur when he spoke yesterday to say, hey, Robert Saleh is going to look at our offense. I really like what Jeff Hafley's been doing. We don't need to mess with that. But as I mentioned earlier on in the show, and I think a caller brought it up, maybe it was Tony, like Hafley's a big boy. He's been a head coach before. I don't think he's going to get depressed or get threatened by the presence of Robert Saleh. But I thought that this was set up nicely by Matt LaFleur, and it's appreciated that he's not stepping on Jeff Hafley's toes. Mike Clemens is here. He was at that press conference earlier today, here to give us the latest on what's going on with the Packers. Mike, Jeff Hafley is box office, and I understand you don't win games in a press conference, but some of that energy has to translate to meetings and to coaching too, right? I mean, the guy I just love listening to him.
Yeah, and Robert Saleh got the 49ers to a level of defense that, knocked out the Packers from the playoffs and came close to, but, came up short against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But that 49ers defense there for a few years under him, probably one of the best defenses in the NFL since Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom in Seattle with Richard Sherman and that gang from a few years before. So Saleh gets to New York. Mike Greenfield from ESPN, he watches all these Jets games. He's a loyal Jets fan. And I'll give this up because I have not seen that much of the Jets, through the Zach Wilson fill-in last year after Rodgers went down with the Achilles. But, a week or two into the season, Greenfield said, Robert Saleh is not a good head coach. He's not managing the games. He doesn't, he might be a great defensive guy. I don't know if he's a good head coach. And I took that seriously. And then, of course, 3 weeks later, Woody Johnson fires him. But, same thing with Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, why was Aaron Rodgers singing his praise and the guy, with the gold zone and Austin Powers clips in his offensive meetings and all that? He gets to Denver and he was a horrible head coach. He was in over his head and then a roster in transaction. And now Sean Payton is there to clean it up. It takes something to be the head coach and the administrative guy, and some guys step into it, and the shoes are too big to fill at that point in their career. And now Hackett's burned. The coach that the coach that the Bears had for 4 or 5 years. I can't remember his name now. He's the offensive coordinator for
Nagy, Matt Nagy, back in Kansas City.
Matt Nagy is now the offensive coordinator back in Kansas City for Andy Reid. And Andy Reid said at the Super Bowl presser last year, you guys had a great game here tonight on offense. And he said, these coaches, when they get fired, like Matt did in Chicago, he says he's going to be a head coach again. You just have to wait for those coaching scars to heal. And that's what, I don't know if Saleh will be a head coach again, but he'll get picked up somewhere. And so the Jets are going to be paying him millions of dollars. But these guys are addicted to football. And so LaFleur brings him in the week that they're going to play the Jaguars, that they're getting ready for, the Lions. Hello.
Yeah.
And just says, come in, take a look at my offense, get your mind off, the firing, get back into it, and maybe you could pick up a tendency or two on Jordan Love and my guys. And you're helping out your friend, you're helping out his image in the league. And Hafley's like, I don't care. I worked with the guy.
Yeah.
I was, he was my defensive coordinator. I call Saleh all the time. So the fact that he's here and over there on the offensive side, I could care less.
Interesting. Well, and I brought this up. I don't remember if it was on Bill's show earlier today. It all starts to run together, but all these guys know each other on some level, Mike. Even if they haven't worked together in the past, but Hafley has worked with Saleh. Like, I don't think you can get your feelings hurt in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you can be a head coach at Boston College and a defensive coordinator in the NFL. I don't know that you can hold all the posts that Jeff Hafley has held if someone coming in and, essentially consulting for a week, if that's going to turn you off, if that's going to get you in your feelings, like, I don't know that you can be successful. What was it like? Was Saleh just standing and watching at practice today? What did you see, if anything, or hear, if anything, from him?
I've got a picture of him I'm going to post later on tonight when I get off the air with you, of him walking in with actually the defensive line coach of the Packers. So, smart guys like, man, Robert Saleh's here. I want to ask him a couple questions.
Might as well. Yeah.
From Lambeau Field across Oneida Street into the practice field this morning. But, he's over there on the offensive side. He's watching the drills. Then he's watching the 11 on 11, and he's taking down notes. He's standing there talking to Matt. He's over there talking to the assistant coaches, and pretty much just getting out of the way and watching. And then I'm sure the key is when they go back upstairs and they have lunch, he's watching the tape and saying, hey, I popped in some of your games from this season so far, and here's what I see, and here's what I recommend, and this motion seems to work, and how come you don't do this more often? Because when you do this, I see defenses confused, and then that starts those kinds of thoughts. When it comes to what are you going to put on the menu, what works, because you tend to get into excuses, or you say, yeah, we've run that play twice, and each time Love threw an interception, right? So you talk yourself out of those things, and then you talk about ways that you can correct it. So today, Kenny Clark, we had a discussion with him about the rotations on the defensive line, and these guys are here to say, I don't mind not having to play 65 snaps as a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Even JJ Enagbari, young player in his second or third year, same thing. I mean, it's a long season, and I trust the guys that we've got on the second and third string that they're not going to blow a play and we're going to get a touchdown or two while we're off. And so that comes into play. And the other thing is that Jeff Hafley went on to a long rant today about I'm an idiot if I don't listen to some of these guys like Kenny Clark or any football player for that matter, because they're out there and they bring in feedback and you have to find plays that are put them in comfortable positions in order to succeed. And if Rashawn Gary isn't getting the sacks, well, he's getting chipped, and you can see that on the film. And then you talk about that during the week. And what do? This past week, you waited for the Texans game, but you moved him inside. And then one of their left guard makes a mistake and literally opened the door, and Rashawn is there on top of C.J. Stroud and nails him. And if it wasn't him that was going to get him, it distracted the offensive line to where Lucas Van Ness would have been coming home off the right tackle, and he would have got Stroud from the other side. So here's the other thing, is that Jeff Hafley today talking about, I got to listen to my coaches too. So there's a guy who played linebacker named Sean Dugan, who then was an assistant here and there, and then got hired, I think it was at Ohio State. Then he got hired at Boston College. So he's one of the low-tier guys in his late 20s. He's actually got an award for one of the top coaches under the age of 30 in college football. Now he's sitting in the box because Jeff Hafley, your defensive coordinator for the Packers, he's doing these games from the box just like they had Joe Barry last couple of years. So he can see the field. He's communicating down to the sidelines and into the green dot helmet this weekend. It was after Quay went down, you were able to get the information into Eric Wilson, who did a great job filling in. And so listen to Hafley talking about, we get ideas on stuff that works from anybody, including a lowly defensive assistant like Sean Dugan. And now the Packers are one of the top 10 defenses in the NFL.
I'm here for one reason and one reason only. We're a top 10 defense in scoring. Awesome. That means we're winning, right? It's not, look at that. I don't care. And I think that's why I'm in a good point in my career right now. And it's like the staff. Like, I'll give you a great example, because this is why I love our defensive staff. So Sean Duggan sits next to me in the booth, right? So it's me, him, and we're constantly going through the iPad. He sat next to me when I was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. He was with me at BC. We kind of he's starting to think alike, right? So he's looking through the pictures, and he looked at one set, and he's like, Coach, you see how far, I don't want to get too detailed. You see how far this guy's doing this? I think if we do this and this, we'll get him. So we quickly figured out how to get that done. We got it, and we sacked him on that play. That was Sean Duggan coming up with that idea. Call him whatever position you want. And it wasn't no, I'm not running. No, it's yeah, that's a damn good idea. And it fits what we do. And we were able to figure out how to communicate to the players. And we got a 7-yard loss on a sack for it. So we're going to keep working together so we can win.
Jeff Hafley does sound like he's having a lot of fun coaching the Packers right now. And I don't know how much of his exit from Boston College was truly he was worn out by the college game, probably partially because his team wasn't winning. But he just sounds like he's having a blast. And I can understand why, Mike. He just has such a deep bench of players, really at every position other than corner. He's got a big handful of safeties, a ton of defensive linemen, especially now with Wyatt getting healthier. Ford's going to be back in some capacity. Like, he's just got so many bodies to move around, so many chess pieces.
Well, he's knocking on wood when you say that.
Yeah,
because,
of course.
you know,
Yeah.
really, I mean, my gosh. I mean, look at this Jackson Jaguars, roster. I mean, they're decimated, and it just goes up and down that way in the league. Now, people are asking questions about Jordan Love and he's leading in the league for interceptions along with touchdowns, and what's going on there. Gosh, here's a guy that even missed 2 games, and he's up there with the picks. You know what? That conversation just goes so far. It's like the guy's taking shots. We want him to take shots downfield. We've got these wide receivers. If you throw 1 pick and 3 touchdowns, who cares, right? I mean, that's so you move on. So the next thing is, I talk. One of the things that really impressed me in the Texans game is how Jordan Love kept on coming back to Romeo Doubs on the slant. And I mean, he just kept coming to it. And it's like, he came to the line, he looked around. I said, do you make up your mind when you're doing that, pre-snap, when you hit that thing so many times? And he talked about that slant pattern he had a half dozen times with Romeo Doubs against the Texans on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just the play call and, picking one side versus the other, things like that. And, I think the defense was giving us some slant windows. The corners are playing off and, letting us take advantage of that. So I think we did a good job to continue to keep calling slants and not shy away from it after a couple were completed. But like I said before, I mean, Romeo did a great job just running through some of those balls and, getting, some big gains on some of those slants. So it's not always like that, but I think we did a good job in that game, just kind of taking what the defense was giving us. The connection, like you said, me and Romeo have a great connection. Nothing's changed with that.
It's funny, Mike, the end of that game, I'm thinking Romeo's the one I trust. That's where I want the ball going. And Wicks is getting open, I know, and Watson's dangerous, but it just felt like on that last drive, that last possession, let Romeo Doubs go and get these tough yards for you and get you into field goal range. And that's kind of how it transpired.
Have you noticed when Romeo Doubs makes a spectacular catch, he just stands up and hands the ball to the ref?
Yeah.
There's no celebration.
Yeah.
You know what? Dude's kind of a loner.
Yeah.
I think. Today, I mean, there's practice squad guys walking to practice, and then here comes 87 walking to practice by himself, not in an expensive SUV with 4 or 5 of his buddies or anything like that. Just walking there and going there a half hour before practice starts to work on the jugs machine. That's just the way the dude is. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but you and I were just talking about, does Stenavich have much to say? He let us in on this. So 2 weeks after the 1-game suspension, where he just didn't show up the week they were going out to LA and playing the Rams in his hometown, he comes back with 2 touchdowns the next game against the Cards, and then leads the team in receptions in this win against a tough Texans team. And Adam Stenavich was said, look how Romeo Doubs has responded from suspension with those past 2 games.
Well, with Romeo, we've seen that with him all camp, and I think part of the thing that led up to his frustration was just not getting those results on the field. And one thing, just being patient, trusting your abilities, trusting the offense, trusting Jordan, just trusting everybody. We know it's going to come. And you obviously saw the last 2 weeks, his route running ability, his strong hands, his playmaking, all that stuff. He's a very talented guy, and I'm really glad that we've all put that behind us and we can move forward because, as you saw, we're a lot better team with him than without him for sure.
It takes a certain, Mike, like I look at what's going on with the New England Patriots right now. Their wide receivers are piping up a lot, and they're making a stink. And like Gerard Mayo, okay, Jalen Polk, you're not going to play the first 3 plays. That's it. The Packers now in 2 back-to-back years have suspended one of their most important players, one on each side of the ball, and the players have responded really well. And I think the Packers deserve credit for that. I think Matt LaFleur deserves credit for that. Help me make sense of that and how that works.
Well, the thing is, you paid your quarterback $250 million, and the entire wide receiver group, because you brought in all these rookies.
Sure.
As a group, they're making $2 million collectively.
Yep.
In a league where Jerry Jones played CeeDee Lamb with $37 million or something.
Yeah.
So things are going to get sticky here. But in the meantime, Christian Watson, who missed a game after that ankle injury, but he comes back now. He's this great talent, and yet he only had 2 targets in a big game against the Texans. 1 catch. One was actually turned out to be, got picked off. So Stanovich saying, well, now you got Christian Watson on the other side, only getting 2 targets in a big game against the Texans. What's going on there?
It was kind of a weird game just because we had 5 3-and-outs. We had 11 total possessions, 5 3-and-outs, and then the other 2 possessions, we had 2 interceptions. So it's like we didn't really get to do a whole lot. There was 4 drives basically where we had actual drives. So, yeah, I mean, you definitely want Christian Watson touching the ball. He is a playmaker. He's shown, to make some pretty big plays. So, which is a matter of getting the plays for him in the game plan called. The one, that we threw an interception on, we were trying to get the ball to him on that one. It just didn't work out. So, yeah, it's just one of those games for him that we didn't get him the ball very much, but he is a guy that we certainly want him to touch the ball more for sure.
It's interesting context from Sunday's game. And then, there's also instances where they're feeding Watson over the middle. I'm like, oh, but he wasn't really open, but they're trying to get him the ball. I don't know. It's a sticky situation, but if the team is winning, Mike, I think to wrap up with you here, I think as long as the team is winning and they're scoring lots of points and they're succeeding as an offense, that helps keep everyone kind of happy as much as they can be, even if they're not getting as many balls as they want to, right?
Yeah, and then you don't lay an egg. You don't take the Jaguars. You take them seriously, even though they now have won a game. They won 2 of their last 3 games. They're 2-5. They got off to a horrible start. They've had injuries, but they've got a kick returner who just ran 96 yards on a punt return. And they're getting a couple of guys back there. And Trevor Lawrence finally seems to be getting into some kind of rhythm. They have a very weak back end. In terms of their secondary, Darnell Savage is back there, at safety, but they do have, some good pass rushers in there. I mean, heck, they've got the number 1 pick overall, Trayvon Walker from Georgia from 2 years ago, lining up. So
well.
Tackles are going to have to keep an eye on him. Hey, the last thing is this story about this Packers fan named Chris Salter. He drove in from Flint, Michigan, 8-hour drive. He spent $1,000 to sit in the front row of the south end zone. He's been to 4 or 5 games. And Joe Mixon runs in for a touchdown and then sees a Texans fan, and he wants to do the Lambeau Leap. And this Salter guy who played, high school football, he's built like a defensive lineman, he pushed Joe Mixon back off the ledge twice, the second time touching his face mask. So some people reported him, and the security took him out of the game. And everybody saw this guy getting yanked after pushing Joe Mixon. Well, they took him into the concourse. They checked him out. Then they checked with NFL security. He said, listen, I just didn't think that the guy deserved to be doing a Lambeau Leap, and
paid for that seat.
Well, it's like he didn't seem to be drunk. They went through an interview. So they let him get back into his seat. And so that's why people see, hey, wait, wasn't that guy the guy ejected? He's the same guy who was there because then when Brandon McManus gets the winning field goal, he goes to the same spot in the south end zone for his first Lambeau Leap, and that guy's there to catch him.
Big day.
So he goes from being arrested. They let him back into the game, and then he's there living the Packer dream as the new kicker who kicks the winning field goal is let back onto the field. So
it's an awesome story, Mike. Hell yeah.
Ryan Wood wrote that story. It's in the Green Bay Press Gazette. Check it out. It's what everybody here is talking about.
I got to run, Mike. Enjoy the game this weekend. We'll talk again soon, but I just thank you for coming on and give us the lowdown tonight.
Thank you, Grant.
Have a good one. That's Mike Clemens. We'll wrap up the show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Packers hit the practice field again today as they continue to prep for their trip to Jacksonville coming up on Sunday. They did so for a second day with a new face on the side.